Hi everyone, welcome to your Math for the Medical Environment course. My name is Sarah Davis and I will be your instructor for the next 10 weeks. This is a math course, obviously, so I wanted to touch on a few topics before we look at this week's presentation. One of the most important things when doing any kind of math, but especially in the medical profession, is to make sure that you're showing your work. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. But one of the most important reasons is the fact that someone else typically is going to be coming back and looking at your work or checking your answer at the very least. And to be able to see where you got your information is vital. So that's one important reason. Also, keep in mind that showing your work doesn't necessarily mean what you learned back in junior high and high school. It doesn't mean writing everything out by hand, things like that. It's just showing us your thought process so we can see how you got from point A to point B. That being said, there's also not one right way to show your work. And I know a lot of you probably grew up in a time where if you didn't show your work the way the teacher said to, it was marked wrong. That's not the case in this course. There are a lot of different ways to do problems and a lot of different ways to show your work. So there is no one right way. What I will tell you is this, though, that when you are showing your work or when you are solving a problem, you can't break any math rules. So it's just like, driving from point A to point B. You might have a different route to get there than I do, but as long as you get there without breaking any rules, everything's fine. But that means no speeding, got to have your insurance with you, got to have a valid driver's license, those types of things. So the same works in math. You have to make sure you do things like following order of operations and things like that. But as long as you get to point A or point B from point A without breaking a rule, you're fine. So as you work on your assignments over the next 10 weeks, I would like for you to show whatever work that you do. Keep in mind using a calculator is perfectly acceptable. So if you are using a calculator, you're just going to write down what you put into the calculator. So this first week is going to cover, in units 1 through 5, it's going to cover addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of whole numbers. And they're going to show you the long way to do everything. And it's great to know how to do that, but also to know that using a calculator is the best way going forward in a work situation. We've all got calculators on our phones. There's always going to be some sort of calculator available to you. So using the calculator to ensure that you don't make errors is key. That being said, writing down what you put into the calculator is the work that I ask you to show. Now, you can do that in a couple of ways. You can use a Word document and you can type everything out. If you're not real handy with Word, if you don't know how to insert equations and things like that in a Word document, that might be somewhat cumbersome for you. So it might be easier for you if you handwrite. So if you want to write things out by hand, you may do so. Then you'll take that handwritten document and you can do one of two things. You can scan it and upload it into the assignment portal, or you can take a picture of it and upload it into Canvas, the pictures into Canvas. So it's totally up to you how you show your work. Just make sure that you do. If you have any questions over the next 10 weeks about anything, how to do a problem, how to show your work, always reach out to me. You can do that by email, by phone, or by text. All of that information is under the instructor contact information. And now let's go ahead and take a quick peek at this presentation. There's a ton of slides here. There's a total of 77. And what I want you to understand is that each of these sections is broken down into units. So this week you're covering sections 1 and 2. Section 1 is comprised of units 1 through 5. So unit 1 is all about adding whole numbers. So it's going to go through and show you how to manually add whole numbers. So how to line up the columns, how to carry, all of those things that you probably have learned before. More than anything, I want you to focus on the practical problems. So looking at those practical problems to see, look for those key words. In this case, here it is, the total cost. Total cost is telling me I'm going to add these things together. So as you go through the units, make sure you're focusing specifically on the practical problems for that unit. So Unit 1 is all about addition. Unit 2 is all about subtraction. So again, they're going to go through and show you those things like, how to borrow and things like that. Now, again, it's the practical problems that's important here. They are going to show you how to check your work. So again, definitely a skill to learn. But in this case, looking at those key words, we know how many there were and how many there have died, and we want to know how many are still alive. So we're looking for the difference between those two numbers. Unit 3 is all about multiplication. Unit 4 is all about division. And Unit 5 is going to be combining operations, so using more than one operation in a single problem. And again, this unit, it's going to be really key that you look at those practice problems, because it's going to show you those key words to look for as you're doing combined operations. And then Section 2 is the next section that you're going to cover this week. Section 2 is all about fractions, so it's going to cover Units 6 through 10. So there's where you're going to get into adding common fractions. Now, this is going to probably be the most challenging unit for some of you, because fractions are just not always our friend. But learning how to get common fractions and then add, subtract, multiply, and divide with those fractions is very important. As we move on further, I am going to talk a little bit about how to get rid of fractions, so that you are only dealing with decimals when we do sample problems. But for this week, I do want you to use the fractions in fraction form. So it's going to be key to show your work so I can see where you might be making your errors. If you have any questions as you go through the material, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and have a great week.